What happens when a harmless game on vacation turns into a weapon and your own laughter becomes evidence against you? I'm Ivadne Hartley, and I thought I knew the answer to that question. I was wrong. It all started during our annual beach vacation with friends at the Sunset Resort in Myrtle Beach. The kind of place where the drinks are overpriced and the entertainment is whatever you make it. Our group had rented adjoining suites, me and my husband Caleb, plus our friends Jasper and his girlfriend Maria, and 2 other couples. Caleb teaches high school science, which means he's methodical about everything. He plans our vacations down to the minute, packs emergency snacks, and always brings extra sunscreen. At 35, he's 3 years older than me, but sometimes he acts like he's 50. Don't get me wrong, I married him because he's stable and reliable. But after 7 years together, reliable can feel a lot like boring. Jasper Linwood is the opposite. He's Caleb's college friend, works in tech support, and somehow manages to turn every gathering into a party. Where Caleb brings extra sunscreen, Jasper brings extra tequila. Where Caleb suggests mini-golf, Jasper suggests skinny dipping. You can guess which suggestions usually win. On our 3rd night, we were all hanging out in Jasper's suite, pleasantly buzzed from dinner and the bottle of wine we'd shared. Someone, I think it was Maria, suggested truth or dare. I know. We're adults in our 30s playing truth or dare like teenagers. But that's what vacation is for, right? Letting loose a little. Come on, Caleb, Jasper said, refilling everyone's glasses. Live a little. It's just a game. Caleb looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. Sure, why not? We sat in a circle on the plush hotel carpet. The first few rounds were harmless, silly dares about singing karaoke or revealing embarrassing childhood stories. Everyone was laughing, relaxed. Even Caleb seemed to be enjoying himself. Then it was my turn, and Jasper gave me that mischievous grin I'd grown to love and hate in equal measure. Truth or dare, Ivadne? Truth, I said, feeling bold from the wine. Okay, Jasper leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. Compare Caleb to your ex-boyfriend Brad. Honestly, no sugarcoating. The room went quiet for a moment. I could feel Caleb tense beside me, but the wine made me feel invincible. Everyone was looking at me expectantly, and I wanted to be the fun one, the one who wasn't afraid to be a little scandalous. Oh, God, I laughed, covering my face dramatically. You really want me to go there? Come on, Maria encouraged. It's just a game. I glanced at Caleb, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You sure you want to hear this, babe? He shrugged. It's just a game, right? So I told them how Brad was spontaneous, where Caleb was predictable. How Brad would surprise me with weekend trips to Vegas, while Caleb needed 3 weeks' notice to go to dinner somewhere new. How Brad made me feel like I was living in a romantic comedy, while Caleb made me feel like I was living in a documentary about suburban life. Don't get me wrong, I said, reaching over to squeeze Caleb's hand. I love my husband, but Brad made me feel alive. Everyone laughed. Even Caleb managed a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I thought I was being playful, honest in a way that showed I was confident enough in my marriage to joke about it. Your turn to ask someone, Jasper said, and the game moved on. What I didn't notice was Caleb quietly taking out his phone and setting it on the side table. What I didn't know was that he'd been recording everything. What I definitely didn't expect was that he'd been planning something much more methodical than a simple vacation game. Later that night, back in our room, Caleb was quiet as he got ready for bed. You okay? I asked, brushing my teeth. Fine, he said. Just tired. You're not upset about the game, are you? It was just silly fun. No, he said, but he didn't look at me. It's fine. I should have pressed him, should have recognized that tone, that careful distance he put between us when something was bothering him. But I was still buzzed from the wine and the attention, still feeling like the fun, confident woman who could joke about her past without consequences. Good, I said, kissing his cheek. Because you know I love you, right? Brad's ancient history. I know, Caleb said. But as I drifted off to sleep, I heard him in the bathroom, the soft glow of his phone screen visible under the door. I thought he was just checking emails. Caleb always checked emails before bed, another one of his predictable habits. I had no idea he was uploading our vacation videos to a secure cloud folder, organizing them by date and time. I had no idea that my husband, the methodical science teacher, had just started building a case. 2 weeks after we got back from vacation, Caleb's parents invited us to their annual summer barbecue. The Hartley family gatherings are always the same. His dad Richard grills burgers and talks about his golf game. His mom Nina fusses over everyone and makes too much potato salad. And his sister Lydia brings her kids and complains about her ex-husband. I usually enjoy these events. Caleb's family has always been warm to me, and I like being part of their close-knit dynamic. My own family is more scattered. My mum Roxana lives 3 states away, and my sister Lynn is always traveling for work. The Hartleys gave me the big family experience I'd always wanted. That day felt different, though. Caleb had been distant since vacation, spending more time in his study and less time talking to me about his day. When I tried to bring up our conversation about maybe taking a weekend trip somewhere, he'd change the subject. When I suggested we invite Jasper and Maria over for dinner, he'd find an excuse to decline. "You've been weird lately," I told him as we drove to his parents' house. "Are you still thinking about that stupid game?" "What game?" he asked, though we both knew exactly what I meant. The truth or dare thing. "Look, if it bothered you, we can talk about it. I was just being honest. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be about?" Caleb nodded slowly. "Honesty. Yes, I think that's very important." Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully, but his expression was neutral. Focused on driving, hands steady on the wheel. Classic Caleb, impossible to read when he wanted to be. The barbecue was in full swing when we arrived. Richard was already at the grill, beer in hand, telling anyone who'd listen about his latest golf triumph. Nena hugged us both and immediately put me to work arranging fruit on a platter. Lydia's kids were running around the backyard with water guns, and her new boyfriend was trying to keep up with them. "How was the beach trip?" Nena asked as we worked in the kitchen. "Oh, it was wonderful," I said. "Really relaxing. We played games, went out to nice dinners. You know how Caleb is. He had every day planned perfectly." "That sounds like our Caleb," she laughed. "Always organized. Did you take lots of pictures?" "Tons. Actually, Jasper recorded some funny videos of us playing Truth or Dare. You know how silly adults can get when they're on vacation." I was thinking about posting some of the vacation photos on social media later. Maybe a few Instagram stories about vacation vibes and good friends, good times. I'd been getting more active on social media lately, and I liked the way people responded to my posts. The likes, the comments calling me goals or living your best life. It felt good to be seen as someone fun and enviable. Nena smiled politely, but I caught her exchanging a look with Richard when she thought I wasn't watching. After dinner, we all gathered in the living room. The kids were finally tired out, sprawled on the floor watching a movie on someone's tablet. The adults were scattered around on couches and chairs, that comfortable post-meal laziness settling over everyone. "Hey," Jasper said, and I was surprised to see him there. I hadn't realized Caleb had invited him. "Remember those hilarious videos from vacation? The Truth or Dare game?" I felt a little flutter of anxiety. "Oh, those were just silly." "We should show everyone," Jasper continued, grinning. "Ivadne was so funny, really honest about some personal stuff." "I don't think," I started, but Caleb was already pulling out his phone. "Actually," Caleb said, his voice perfectly calm, "I have the audio right here." The room went quiet. Everyone looked at Caleb, then at me, sensing something was about to happen but not sure what. "Caleb," I said carefully, "maybe we shouldn't." But he was already connecting his phone to his parents' Bluetooth speaker, the one they used for background music during parties, now about to broadcast my vacation confession to his entire family. "It's just a game, right?" Caleb said, echoing my words from that night. "Just harmless fun." He pressed play. My own voice filled the room, slightly slurred from wine but perfectly clear. "Oh God, you really want me to go there?" Then Jasper's voice. "Come on, it's just a game." And then me, laughing. Okay. Brad was spontaneous where Caleb was predictable. Brad would surprise me with weekend trips to Vegas, while Caleb needed 3 weeks' notice to go to dinner somewhere new. Brad made me feel like I was living in a romantic comedy, while Caleb made me feel like I was living in a documentary about suburban life. The silence in the room was deafening. I watched the faces around me change from curiosity to discomfort to something approaching horror. Richard's jaw tightened. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Lydia stared at me like I'd just announced I was joining a cult. The recording continued. "Don't get me wrong, I love my husband, but Brad made me feel alive." Caleb let it play for another few seconds. The laughter from our vacation friends, my own giggling, the clink of glasses before turning it off. "That's my wife," he said conversationally, being honest about our marriage, in front of our friends, on vacation. I felt like I was going to throw up. "Caleb, that was taken out of context. It was just a game," he finished. "Yes, you mentioned that." Richard cleared his throat. "Maybe we should—" "No," Lydia said, her voice sharp. "I want to hear this. Ivadne, did you really just compare my brother to your ex-boyfriend, in front of other people, and call your marriage boring?" "It wasn't like that," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "We were all just joking around. Everyone was saying personal stuff." "Everyone was humiliating their spouses?" Elena asked quietly. I looked around the room, desperate for an ally. Jasper was studying his shoes, suddenly very interested in not making eye contact. The kids were still watching their movie, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them. "I think," Richard said slowly, "that maybe it's time for people to go home." "Dad, no," Lydia said. "I want to understand this. Ivadne, do you have any idea how this makes Caleb look? How it makes our family look? You're sitting here in our house, eating our food, and we just found out you've been telling people that your husband is boring compared to some ex-boyfriend?" "Lydia," Caleb said quietly, "it's okay." "No, it's not okay," she snapped. "Nothing about this is okay." I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. It was supposed to be a funny story, a moment of honesty between friends. Not this public humiliation, not this family tribunal. "I think I should go," Jasper said, standing up quickly. "Yeah," Lydia said coldly. "I think you should." After Jasper left, the room stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, Elena spoke. "Caleb, honey, maybe you and Ivadne should go home and talk about this privately." "We will," Caleb said. He was still perfectly calm, but I could see something calculating in his eyes. "But I thought everyone should know what kind of games we play on vacation, what kind of honesty my wife values." As we gathered our things to leave, I caught Caleb taking out his phone again. This time, I was sure he was recording. The shocked faces, the uncomfortable silence, the way his family looked at me like I was a stranger. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Documenting," he said simply, "for honesty's sake." The drive home from the barbecue was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and my occasional sniffles. I kept waiting for Caleb to say something, to yell at me, to demand an explanation, to give me a chance to defend myself. But he just drove, hands steady on the wheel, eyes focused on the road ahead. "Are you going to talk to me?" I finally asked as we pulled into our driveway. "What would you like me to say?" he replied, turning off the engine. "I don't know. Something. Anything. You just humiliated me in front of your entire family." Caleb turned to look at me then, and his expression was so calm it was almost scary. "I humiliated you? by playing an audio recording of your own words. You know, that's not fair. That was a private moment between friends. Private? He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. Is this private too? It was my Instagram story from the day after we got back from vacation. A photo of me and Jasper laughing at some bar, with the caption, "Some people know how to have fun, sure, vacation vibes, doubt no regrets." I'd posted it without thinking, just part of my usual social media routine. But seeing it now, through Caleb's eyes, I realized how it looked. "That's not what you think," I said quickly. "What do I think, Ivadne?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, you're wrong. Jasper and I are just friends. We were just having drinks with the group." Caleb scrolled through his phone. "Here's another one. You and Jasper at the hotel pool. Caption, when someone actually appreciates your sense of humor." And another one, "Life's too short to apologize for being fun." My stomach dropped. I remembered posting those, remembered feeling defiant and proud of myself for not backing down from who I was. But now they look different, petty, mean. "Caleb, And this one," he continued, "from yesterday. A quote post that says, 'A woman should never have to dim her light to make a man comfortable,' with 3 fire emojis. I had posted that. After feeling guilty about the vacation thing, I'd seen the quote on someone else's page, and it had resonated with me. It made me feel like I was standing up for myself instead of apologizing for being honest. "I was just expressing myself," I said weakly. "By expressing how unsatisfied you are with our marriage. How boring you find me. How much more alive your ex-boyfriend made you feel." When he put it like that, it sounded terrible. But that wasn't what I'd meant. Was it? "You're twisting everything," I said. "I love you. I married you. I chose you." "Did you?" Caleb asked. "Or did you settle for me? The safe choice? The boring guy who plans vacations and brings extra sunscreen?" I didn't know how to answer that, because if I was being honest, really honest, there was some truth to what he was saying. I had chosen Caleb because he was stable and reliable. I had sometimes felt like I was settling for a quiet life instead of an exciting one. But that didn't mean I didn't love him. It didn't mean our marriage was a joke. Did it? Inside the house, Caleb went straight to his study and closed the door. I could hear him typing, the occasional sound of papers shuffling. I wanted to knock, to demand we talk about this properly, but something held me back. Instead, I went to our bedroom and opened my laptop. Maybe I was being defensive, but I needed to see if I was crazy. I scrolled through my social media posts from the past few weeks, looking at them with fresh eyes. There were a lot more than I'd realized. Photos of me and Jasper, captions about living authentically and not apologizing for who you are. Shared posts about women supporting women and not letting anyone dim your shine. I'd thought I was being empowering. Now it looked like I was being, what? Disrespectful? Disloyal? My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Honey, Lynn told me about some family drama. Are you okay?" I called her immediately. "Mom, did Lynn tell you what happened?" "She said there was some kind of argument at Caleb's family barbecue, something about a recording." I explained the whole situation, the vacation game, Caleb playing the audio, the family's reaction. As I talked, I found myself getting angry again. Why was I the villain here? All I'd done was tell the truth during a silly game. "Oh, honey," Mom said when I finished. "That does sound embarrassing. For him, maybe. But I wasn't lying, and I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." "Of course not, but sweetheart, maybe you could have been a little more diplomatic. You know how men are about their egos." "So I'm supposed to lie? Pretend everything is perfect all the time?" "Not lie, just, you're married, not buried, but you still have to live with the man." That made me feel better. Mum was right. I shouldn't have to pretend to be someone I'm not just to protect Caleb's feelings. Marriage was supposed to be about honesty and authenticity. I decided to post something on Facebook, not mean or petty, just honest about how I was feeling. Going through a rough patch with family drama, I wrote. Sometimes being honest about your feelings gets you in trouble, but I'd rather be real than fake. Thanks to everyone who supports women being authentic. The responses started coming in immediately. Friends commenting about how brave I was, how they admired my honesty, how some people just couldn't handle strong women. Each comment made me feel more justified, more righteous. But then I got a text from Lynn. Saw your post, maybe take a step back and think about this differently. What do you mean? I texted back. I mean, maybe consider how Caleb feels instead of making this about women's empowerment. You embarrassed your husband. That's not about being authentic, it's about being thoughtless. I stared at the text, feeling stung. Lynn was supposed to be on my side. She was my sister. Since when do you take his side over mine? I typed. Since I realized he's the one who got hurt here, and you're the one making it worse. I turned off my phone and went to take a bath. I needed to think, to process everything that had happened. But every time I tried to see it from Caleb's perspective, I felt defensive again. Yes, maybe I could have been more tactful. But everything I'd said was true, and wasn't honesty supposed to be the foundation of a good marriage? When I got out of the bath, I could hear Caleb still working in his study. I knocked on the door. Come in, he said. He was sitting at his desk, surrounded by papers and printouts. I could see screenshots of my social media posts, printed emails, what looked like a timeline written in his careful handwriting. What is all this? I asked. Documentation, he said without looking up. Documentation of what? Everything. The vacation recording, your social media posts, the family's reactions today, the timeline of events. A chill ran down my spine. Why? For the first time since the barbecue, Caleb looked directly at me. Because, Ivadne, I've learned that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. And you've shown me exactly who you are and what you think of our marriage. That's not fair. You're taking everything out of context. Am I? He gestured to the papers. This is 7 years of marriage, 7 years of me thinking we were building something together. And now I find out that the whole time you've been comparing me to your ex-boyfriend and finding me lacking. That you think our life together is boring. That you've been sharing these feelings with our friends and now with the internet. It's not like that. Then what is it like? He asked. Explain it to me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife has been publicly humiliating me, and I was too naive to notice. I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came. Because looking at all that documentation, all those screenshots and timelines, I was starting to see a pattern I hadn't noticed before. Maybe I had been humiliating him. Maybe I had been thoughtless and cruel, but it was too late to take any of it back. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. My first thought was that someone had died. My second thought was that I wished someone had, because it would have been easier to explain than what had actually happened. Jasper had posted about the barbecue incident on his social media. Not the full story, just enough to make me look like the victim, and Caleb looked like a controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife having male friends. When your friend's husband tries to make her feel bad for being herself, he'd written, along with a photo of us from vacation. Some people just can't handle confident women. Support your friends, Anne's toxic masculinity. The post had been shared dozens of times. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications, people tagging me, commenting on my posts, sending me private messages of support. At first, I felt vindicated. See, other people understood. Other people could see that Caleb was overreacting. But then I started reading the comments more carefully. Wait, she compared her husband to her ex, in front of people. I mean, that's pretty messed up. There's being confident and then there's being disrespectful. Why is she even friends with this guy if she's married? The tide was turning, and it was turning fast. People who had initially supported me were starting to ask questions. People were sharing screenshots of my previous posts, pointing out the pattern of complaints about my marriage. By noon, I was trending in our local social media groups, not in a good way. I called Jasper, furious. "Why did you post that?" I demanded. "I was trying to help," he said, but he sounded less confident than usual. "You were upset, and I thought." "You thought what? That making this public would somehow make it better?" "Look, maybe I made a mistake, but Caleb was way out of line yesterday, playing that recording in front of everyone. That was cruel." "It was my own words, Jasper. He played my own words." There was a pause. "Are you defending him now?" "I'm not defending anyone. I'm just saying maybe we should have kept this private." "Too late for that," Jasper said. "It's already out there." He was right. It was out there, and it was spreading. By the end of the day, the story had been picked up by one of those local gossip blogs that thrives on suburban drama. They'd somehow gotten hold of the audio recording and posted excerpts, along with screenshots of my social media posts. The headline read, "Local Woman's Vacation, Truth or Dare, Game Exposes Marriage Drama, Husband's Revenge Goes Viral." I felt sick reading it. They'd made me sound like a cheating wife and Caleb sound like a vindictive husband. Neither portrayal felt fair, but I couldn't deny that the evidence looked damning when it was all laid out like that. My phone rang. It was my boss, Patricia. "Ivadne, I need you to come in early tomorrow. We need to talk." "About what?" "I think you know what." The next morning, I sat in Patricia's glass-walled office while she showed me printouts of the blog post and screenshots of my social media activity. "Our clients have been calling," she said. "Apparently, some of them follow you on social media, and they're concerned about your professionalism." "My personal life has nothing to do with my job," I said. "It does when it affects our company's reputation. Ivadne, you handle sensitive client information. You represent our firm. When you're posting about marriage drama and vacation hookups—" "There were no hookups," I interrupted. "It reflects on all of us. I'm going to need you to clean up your social media presence, remove anything controversial, and maybe consider taking a break from posting for a while." I wanted to argue, but I needed this job. Caleb and I had a mortgage, car payments, all the usual expenses of adult life. I couldn't afford to get fired over something this stupid. "Fine," I said. "I'll clean it up." But when I got home and started going through my posts, I realized how impossible that was going to be. The problematic content wasn't just from the past few weeks. It went back months, maybe longer. Casual complaints about my marriage, photos with Jasper that could be misinterpreted, shared posts about women deserving better that now looked like passive-aggressive attacks on my husband. How had I not seen this pattern before? I was in the middle of deleting posts when Caleb came home from work. He looked tired, older somehow than he had just a few days ago. "How was your day?" I asked, trying for normalcy. "Interesting," he said. 3 different people sent me that blog post. My principal called me into his office to make sure everything was okay at home. And Jasper's been calling me all day. What does he want? To apologize, apparently, for making things worse. Caleb sat down across from me. "He's right, you know. He did make things worse, but not in the way he thinks." "What do you mean?" "I mean, he gave me exactly what I needed. Public documentation of your feelings about our marriage, independent corroboration of the pattern I'd been tracking." That chill ran down my spine again. "Pattern?" Caleb pulled out his phone and opened a folder labeled Evidence. Inside were hundreds of screenshots, organized by date and category. My social media posts, text message conversations, photos, comments from friends. "You've been documenting our marriage problems for months," he said. "Every complaint, every comparison, every moment of dissatisfaction. You've been building a case against me without even realizing it." I stared at the phone screen, scrolling through months of my own words. Taken individually, each post had seemed harmless, just normal venting or sharing. But compiled together like this, they told a story I didn't recognize. The story of a woman who was deeply unhappy in her marriage and wasn't afraid to let everyone know it. I wasn't building a case, I whispered. Weren't you? Caleb asked. Every time you posted about deserving better, every time you shared a quote about settling for less than your worth, every time you posed for photos with Jasper while complaining about your boring husband, what were you doing? I didn't have an answer, because looking at it like this, it did look like I'd been building a case. Not consciously, not deliberately, but consistently and thoroughly. Caleb, I'm sorry, I said. I didn't realize. That's the problem, he interrupted. You didn't realize. You didn't think about how your words might affect me, or our marriage, or our future. You just said whatever felt good in the moment and let other people deal with the consequences. He was right. I had been thoughtless, selfish even. But I hadn't meant to hurt him. What do you want me to do? I asked. How do I fix this? Caleb looked at me for a long moment. I don't think you can, he said finally. I think you've shown me who you really are, and I think I need to decide what to do with that information. That night, I heard him on the phone in his study. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was businesslike, professional. When I tried to go in, the door was locked. For the first time since this whole thing started, I began to wonder if I was about to lose more than just my pride. I should have known something was wrong when Caleb started being nice to me again. It happened gradually over the next 2 weeks. He stopped working late in his study. He made coffee for both of us in the morning. He even suggested we watch a movie together, something we hadn't done since before the vacation. I thought maybe we were getting past it. Maybe the shock of seeing our problems laid out so starkly had been a wake-up call for both of us. Maybe we could work through this and come out stronger. I was wrong. The first sign was when I came home from work on a Wednesday and found boxes in the hallway. What are these? I called out. Just organizing some things, Caleb replied from the kitchen. Getting rid of stuff we don't need. But when I looked closer, I realized the boxes were full of my things. Not obviously. There were some of his books mixed in, some random household items, but definitely more mine than his. Photo albums from before we met, decorations I'd brought from my apartment when we moved in together, clothes I hadn't worn in years but hadn't been ready to donate. Why are you packing my stuff? I asked. I'm not packing your stuff, he said calmly. I'm decluttering. We have too much stuff for this house. It was a reasonable explanation, but something felt off. Caleb had never cared about decluttering before. He was the one who kept every manual for every appliance we'd ever owned, who had boxes of college textbooks he'd never look at again. The second sign was the phone call I overheard that Friday night. I'd gone to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I was lying there thinking about everything that had happened, wondering if we'd ever really get past it, when I heard Caleb's voice from the study. Yes, I understand the timeline, he was saying. How long does the process usually take? I crept closer to the door, my heart pounding. And the documentation I've provided is sufficient, he continued. Good. Yes, I'll be there Monday morning. I backed away from the door and went to the bathroom, my mind racing. Documentation, timeline, Monday morning appointment. It could be anything, a work thing, a medical thing, a financial thing. But combined with the boxes and the sudden niceness, I was starting to suspect it was something much worse. On Sunday, we went to lunch at his parents' house. It was supposed to be a family reconciliation. Elela Nena had called and insisted we all needed to clear the air after the barbecue incident. The meal was awkward but civil. Richard talked about golf. Elela Nena fussed over everyone's plates, and Lydia's kids provided enough chaos to distract from the adult tension. I thought maybe we were going to get through it without any major drama. Then Lydia spoke up. So, Ivadne, she said, cutting into her chicken with more force than necessary. Have you learned anything from this whole situation? Lydia, Elela Nena warned. No, Mom, I want to know. Has she figured out that humiliating your spouse isn't part of a healthy marriage? Or are we all just supposed to pretend that didn't happen? I felt my face burn. I've apologized. I've acknowledged that I made mistakes. Have you? Lydia asked. Because from what I've seen online, you've been playing the victim. Poor Ivadne, whose husband couldn't handle her honesty. I deleted those posts, I said, after they'd already been shared and screenshotted by half the internet. Lydia, that's enough, Richard said quietly. Is it, Dad? Because I'm watching my brother get humiliated by his own wife, and everyone's acting like we should just move on and pretend it's fine. I looked at Caleb, expecting him to defend me, or at least tell his sister to back off. But he was just sitting there, cutting his food into precise, even pieces. Caleb? I said. Are you going to say something? He looked up at me and his expression was completely neutral. What would you like me to say? That your sister is being unfair, that we're working through our problems, that you don't want your family attacking me. Am I attacking you? Lydia asked. Or am I just pointing out that actions have consequences? You're being cruel, I said, tears starting to form. I'm being honest, she replied. I thought you valued honesty. The drive home was silent again, but this time the silence felt different, final somehow. Your sister hates me, I said as we pulled into our driveway. She's protective of me, Caleb replied. She doesn't understand why I've stayed calm through all this. Why have you stayed calm? Caleb turned off the engine and looked at me. Because getting emotional wouldn't serve my purposes. What purposes? You'll find out tomorrow. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about that phrase. Serve my purposes. And the way he'd said it. So calculated, so cold. Monday morning, Caleb left for work early. He kissed my forehead and said he'd see me later, just like any other day. But something in his tone made it sound like goodbye. I was at work, trying to focus on a client file, when the doorbell rang at our house. I knew because our security system sent an alert to my phone. Someone was at the door, but the camera showed a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Then my phone rang. Mrs. Hartley, this is David Chen from Morrison & Associates Legal Services. I have some documents that need to be delivered to you personally. My hand started shaking. What kind of documents? I'm not able to discuss the details over the phone, Ma'am, but I do need you to sign for receipt. I left work early, my mind spinning with possibilities. Maybe it was something work-related, maybe something to do with our mortgage or insurance. Maybe Caleb was refinancing something and needed my signature. But when I opened the envelope, the first words I saw were petition for dissolution of marriage. I read the first page 3 times before the words sank in. Caleb was divorcing me. Not only that, but he'd already filed all the paperwork, already met with a lawyer, already started the legal process. The petition was thorough. Irreconcilable differences. Request for equitable distribution of assets. Attached exhibits, including printed screenshots of my social media posts, transcripts of the vacation recording, and a detailed timeline of what he called pattern of public humiliation and marital disrespect. Everything was there. Every post I'd made, every photo with Jasper, every complaint about our marriage, organized, categorized, and presented as evidence that our marriage was beyond repair. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. Ivadne. You wanted honesty. Here it is. You've spent months documenting your dissatisfaction with our marriage and your attraction to another man. You've humiliated me publicly and repeatedly. You've shown no genuine remorse, only anger at being caught. I've decided to believe you when you show me who you are. The papers are filed. The process has begun. Please have any questions directed to your attorney. Caleb. I sat on our couch, his couch, apparently, holding the papers and trying to process what had just happened. My husband, the quiet science teacher who planned our vacations and brought extra sunscreen, had just executed the most thorough and devastating divorce filing I'd ever seen. He hadn't yelled at me or demanded explanations. He hadn't given me ultimatums or threatened to leave. He'd just quietly, methodically, built his case and filed his papers. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I called his school, but they said he was in meetings all day. I called his parents, but la Nina just said, "Oh, honey," in a tone that told me she already knew. By the time Caleb came home that evening, I was sitting in the same spot on the couch, the papers spread out in front of me like evidence at a crime scene. "You filed for divorce," I said when he walked in. "Yes," without talking to me about it. "What was there to talk about?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. "You've made your feelings about our marriage very clear." "But I never said I wanted a divorce. I never said I wanted to leave." "You didn't have to say it, Ivadne. You showed it. Every day for months. Every post, every photo, every public complaint. You've been leaving me piece by piece. I'm just making it official." I stared at him, this man I'd been married to for 7 years, and realized I'd never really known him at all. I'd seen the quiet, methodical exterior and assumed there was nothing more complex underneath. I'd been wrong about that too. The divorce proceedings took 4 months, 4 months of lawyers and mediation sessions, and dividing up 7 years of shared life into neat legal categories. Caleb's documentation made the process swift and efficient. Every asset was accounted for, every debt catalogued, every piece of evidence organized and filed. His lawyer was as methodical as he was, and my lawyer, when I finally found one I could afford, kept telling me that fighting the petition would be expensive and ultimately futile. "He's got a strong case," she said during one of our meetings. "The social media posts alone show a pattern of behavior that supports his claims of irreconcilable differences." "But I never cheated," I protested. "I never actually did anything with Jasper." "Physical infidelity isn't the only grounds for divorce," she replied. "Emotional infidelity, public humiliation, breakdown of marital respect, these are all valid reasons, and your husband has documented all of them extensively." The worst part wasn't the legal process. It was watching my social circle collapse in real time. Jasper disappeared first. After his initial post offending me backfired, he'd gone quiet on social media and stopped responding to my texts. When I finally called him directly, he was awkward and distant. "Look, Ivadne, I think maybe we should take a break from hanging out," he said. "This whole thing has gotten way too complicated." "You were the one who posted about it," I reminded him. "Yeah, and that was a mistake. I was trying to help, but I just made things worse for everyone." "So you're abandoning me too?" "I'm not abandoning you. I'm just stepping back. You need to work out your marriage problems without me being involved." But it was too late for that. The damage was done, and Jasper's retreat just made it more obvious to everyone that there had been something inappropriate about our friendship. Our mutual friends picked sides, and most of them picked Caleb, not dramatically or publicly, but quietly. Invitations stopped coming. Group chats went silent. When I ran into people at the grocery store or the gym, conversations were polite but brief. I understood why. Nobody wants to be friends with the woman who humiliated her husband and then got publicly divorced because of it. Nobody wants that drama in their life. My family was more supportive, but even that had limits. "I just don't understand how it got this far," my sister Lynn said during one of our phone calls. "How did you not see that he was building a case against you?" "Because I didn't think he was capable of something like this," I said. "I thought he was just Caleb. Boring, predictable Caleb." "That was your first mistake," Lynn said, underestimating him. She was right. I'd underestimated Caleb, mistaking his quiet, methodical nature for weakness. My mum's question still stung. "Did you really not realize how your post looked?" The divorce hearing was brief. A rainy November Thursday. The judge granted dissolution in under 30 minutes. Caleb left without a word. I moved into a small apartment, the silence deafening. My phone, once buzzing constantly, stayed quiet. Dating was hard. Explaining my marriage ended over my own social media posts felt impossible. 6 months later, La Nina said Caleb was happy with a new teacher girlfriend. I admitted I was still working on happiness. A year on, I found an old blog post that fueled his case. One comment hit hardest. Sounds like two people who forgot they were on the same team. I'd fought against my marriage instead of for it. In my next relationship, if there is one, I'll remember, love means being teammates, especially when it's hard.